Movement, as we've been going on this Made for More journey, one of the things we've talked about is doing more with partners. And one of our partners that we love to walk alongside of is the Christian Children's Home of Ohio. It's a residential facility for kids that are in need of a place to live as they're dealing with all sorts of trauma and brokenness in their lives. And we have an opportunity to do something very hands-on to help during this season. And so November 15th and 22nd, we have 2 in-person gatherings, the first being at Owens Community College, the second one being at our new movement facility for a special vision and prayer time there. So those are both Sunday gatherings in person, and we want to ask you to participate and bring some stuff along with you to just serve and support CCHO. And so they've asked us to provide a few different things. The first is 3-in-1 body wash, shampoo, and conditioner, and I've got some help with that. So if you want to pick up shampoo and body wash, you can pick that up. Pass that along. The second are pillows. Their cottages and all their beds are in need of pillows, and they've asked if we could provide pillows for the kids that are going to be living there. And so that's option number 2. And option number 3 are Christmas decorations, both lights for outside of their cottages, there are individual cottages, or also inflatable Christmas decorations that they can put up outside of their cottages, just to give the kids a Christmas experience that it just brings joy to them. And so you can go online to movementfindlay.com, and you'll find a link there to sign up for what you're going to bring. That way we make sure we have stuff covered. Also check in Facebook, because we'll have info and opportunities. We'll engage you there in ways that you can point you to the Sign Up Genius, where you can register to bring some of these things either the 15th or the 22nd. Just want to encourage you to be a part of this as we head into the holiday season. This is a great opportunity to just live out Jesus' words, which are, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Thanks for being a part of this.
Good morning, Movement. We are so glad that you are joining us this morning. We are in the midst of the Made for More series. My name is Allison, and this is Evan, and we are your hosts for this morning.
Yep, and if you're new here, you could not have picked a better time to join us. As Allison mentioned, we're in a Made for More series. It's a 4-part series. We are in week 3. The other 2 weeks, they are available online and on Facebook as well. We'll give you a link later on. But like Allison said, it's the Made for More series. If you're wondering what that is, it's basically an initiative that we started last year, and we're revisiting it this year. And bottom line, Allison, the Made for More series is just an overall summary of the vision of movement.
Absolutely. About a year ago, we started our series, and we're just really asking the question, what is the more that God has for me? So you ask yourself that, but not only did we individually ask ourselves that, we're asking ourselves that as a community and as movement. So what's the more that God is calling us to? So we really broke it down into 3 things. More in mobilization, which we talked about a little bit in week 1, more in our community, which we talked a little bit week 2, and then today, more with our partners, and really what that looks like, and what's God calling us to in each one of those aspects. And as we mentioned earlier, the significance of joining us for all 4 weeks of this series.
Yep, and before we really get started, we want to let you know that if you're new here, like we said before, we're so happy that you're here. We want you to know that you're welcome wherever you're at, whether you have doubts, whether you have concerns, whether you just don't know anything. That's okay. We're happy that you're here. We do want to get to know you better, and if you look in the comments, there's a comment pinned to the very top, which is a connection card. So if you could click on that and just fill that out for us so we can get to know your name, a little bit more about you, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. The connection cards is just a perfect way to know who you are, and our way of reaching out and introducing ourselves and really just praying for you and introducing you to this community. So before we jump into our time of worship, we're actually going to hear from a story from Joe and Ellen Francis about how the Made for More series has impacted them and their story.
Hey, I'm Joe, and this is my wife, Ellen. And I attended Movement shortly before we kicked off the Made for More initiative.
And I've been going to Movement for a while, but I think one thing that really excited us about Made for More, it was a really interesting journey for us because we started that when we were just dating. And so it's been unique for the two of us to make a commitment kind of independently while still like sharing that with each other. But we made some choices on our own about, you know, what steps we were gonna take. And then since then we have gotten engaged and married. And so now it's definitely something that we're doing together. And I think that's been really unique and special for us.
Yeah. And the exciting part for me has just been watching God just grow so many people through all this. It's exciting seeing people take those steps of faith and just step into the more that God has had for them. So the steps of faith that I took, I just really felt God just calling me to more. And this was like pre-movement. And I just was at a place where I was very just stagnant in my walk with Him. And I wasn't being challenged. I was just kind of just in this blah space, really, if you want to call it that. And I just felt God tugging on my heart that He had more for me, but I didn't know what that was at the time. And so Ellen actually invited me to Movement, and that's really how I got plugged in. And through that and through growing in our relationship together, we made some decisions together. We had our own individual commitments to God through this Made for More initiative. But I just really felt God just challenge me in so many ways and asking me to sacrifice my living space and just moving in with other people to just be able to just invest more into what God was calling me to. And He really called us in different aspects as far as like multiplying, and that was really challenging because I never had been around something like that before, so it was very uncomfortable. But God just kept reminding me that He had me in His hands and that He was going to provide every step of the way.
Yeah, and I think for both of us too, I know that when we wrote down like what our prayers were for Made for More, something that I wrote down was that we would just withhold nothing from God. And so I think we really saw that play out and just taking steps in really placing God first in everything. And, you know, like Joe was mentioning with multiplying our move group, and that was something where it would have been easy to hold on to what we felt like God had given us in that existing group of people that we had grown with and invested in. But we felt that He was asking us to take that step to invest in other people and to allow that to multiply. And I think going back to like what excites us about this, I think it's because it's so much bigger than just us. It's so much bigger than even just Movement. Like it's being part of something that matters beyond just us. And I think those are the things that we've experienced in this.
So I've seen just God move just by Him teaching me what it really looks like teaching us really, what it really looks like to trust Him fully, to go all in. And I don't know much about poker, but what I do know is when you you go all in, you put all your chips in, you basically are relying on your card, your deck, your hand. And if you have a bad hand, well, game's over. And what the really cool piece that God has been teaching, I think, us is that, and He just really knows what's best for us.
I think for anybody who is considering taking a step or maybe feeling a little bit of hesitation about it, I think what I would encourage you is there are always going to be plenty of reasons to hesitate, and there's always going to be plenty of excuses, but what God has on the other side of just taking that first step is well worth it. And you know, it makes me think of that passage that we focused on and Made for More, that He can do far more than we would ever ask or imagine. He's capable of that. And so I think by taking that step, you'll experience that in ways that, I can't even imagine for you right now. But I would say don't hesitate.
Along with that, I would just say, just do it. In all seriousness, I think oftentimes we let fear get in the way of us taking steps. And, if you're seeking Him in this, don't let that fear hold you back. Just take that step forward and just trust that He's going to provide. And it's not going to be perfect. It may be uncomfortable, but God's just going to grow you immensely in that. I'm Joe.
And I'm Ellen.
And we're made for more.
You're the God who makes the giants fall. You bring down the walls of Jericho. You're the God who gives us miracles. We believe. You're the God who parts the ocean wide, to bring us closer to your side. You're the God who brings the dead to life. We believe. We believe. God, how great you are. The great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. For every victory and every battle won, for everything we've seen, there is more to come. We are confident in all your ways, 'cause we know you never make mistakes. God, you fill us with a great faith. We believe. We believe. God, how great you are. Great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. Every victory and every battle won. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. All of our hoping, all of our trusting, all of our future in the God who never fails. All of our faith in, all of our strength in, all of our future in the God who never fails. All of our hope in, all of our trust in, all of our future in the God who never fails. All of our faith in, all of our strength in, all of our future in the God who never fails. And God, how great you are, the great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. In every victory and every battle won, for everything
Well, we are in the middle of this journey we're calling Made for More. And over the past few weeks, we've been asking this question: what's the more that God has for me? This journey really started not just a couple weeks ago, but over a year ago, as we originally went on this journey together called Made for More. And we took the step of faith as a church and really believed that God was calling us to take this huge step of faith, that he was able to do immeasurably more than all we asked or imagined. And we invited people who are part of Movement to come along with us and to be a part of that. This year, we are just building on that dream and that vision, and at the same time, we're inviting even more people to come along and ask that question for the very first time. And for some of us, it's just to go back to that question: what's the more, God, that you have for me? And so today, as we continue on this journey together, I really want the focus, or a lot of the focus, to be on this right here. Now, if you can't see what that is, I've got a bunch of them here. They're actually seeds. And we're going to talk about seeds today from a couple of different perspectives. But I thought I would start by just sharing the first time that I planted one of these. When I was in 7th grade, we had a science project where we were given a packet of seeds. And the goal of the project was we were supposed to do something something special or something extra. We would plant these seeds, put them in the greenhouse, and then do something special that would help them grow, right? Like we were supposed to test some kind of theory on what would make our seeds grow and to produce, a plant and even produce fruit on that plant that would be better than maybe someone else's, seeds that they planted in our room. And so people chose to plant their seeds and do things like add fertilizer on certain days, and other people had a plan. Their theory was, if I water my plant an extra time, or if I don't water for certain days and I do for other days. Well, my friend and I, as we were contemplating what we wanted our theory to be, we landed on this: that every night before we would leave to go home, now this was 7th grade, before we leave to go home, we'd get out our Walkman CD player. All right. Now, for those of you that are, under the age of 25, a Walkman CD player was like a personal CD player that if you moved at all, it would skip, it'd drive you, crazy and all that. But anyways, we get our Walkman CD player and we take the headphones and we put them on the side of our plant. And then every night we would play "I Love It When You Call Me Big Papa" by the Notorious B.I.G. And we would talk on it. I can't even say. We would every night we would play that song, and then it would inspire our plant to new heights and to great growth. And so at the end of our experiment, our plant had died and we were out of luck. So that was my first experience with planting seeds. But the scriptures, they talk all the time about the significance of planting seed. In fact, Jesus tells a lot of parables or stories about sowing or planting seed. And I want to look today at one of those. It's found in Mark chapter 4, but it's also in two of the other gospels as well, because it's such a significant story. It's the parable of the sower. And I just want to read some of that to you today. Mark chapter 4, here's what we see. It says, "And again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. The crowd that gathered around him was so large that he got in a boat and he sat in it out on the lake while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge." And so here's the picture, right? Like Jesus is teaching and the crowds get so big that he has to push out off of the shore so that more people can come around and listen. And so he then goes on, and here's what we see happens next. "He taught them many things by parables or stories. And in his teaching, he said this. He said, 'Listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed.'" So here's what's going on, right? A farmer sets out with a bunch of seed because a farmer plants seed and hopes that it will produce a crop. And that's what Jesus is explaining going on in the story. And then he goes on, he says this: "As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path and the birds came up and ate it. Some fell on a rocky place where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, but the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. And yet other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so they did not bear grain. And so far we've got three groups of seed that fell. None of it's producing, and so you're thinking this guy's not very good at farming. But there's some other seed that fell in a different type of soil, and this is what Jesus says next. He says, "Still other seed fell on good soil. It came up, it grew, and it produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, and some even 100 times." Now, so often when Jesus would tell, parables or stories, he would share the story and then he just let people kind of figure out the meaning and understanding of what that meant on their own. And that was just part of the power of the parable. But other times, and very, in specific times, Jesus would actually give the meaning. Like, it was so important that he wanted to make sure that they did not miss out on what this parable or this story was all about. And so Jesus does that in this instance. So we're going to skip ahead a few verses, and Jesus gives them the answer. And here's the answer that he gives. He says this: the farmer sows the word. So when he's talking about this seed, Jesus says the seed that the farmer was sowing represents the word. Now, what's the word? Is it the scriptures? Yes, of course. It's the scriptures. You got to remember, when Jesus is telling this story, though, the New Testament wasn't even in existence because they just had parts of the Old Testament. And so, as Jesus is kind of sharing this, it's more than just like the Bible, right? It's the word of, it's the word represents really who Jesus is. It represents this call to something more, to something different. The word represents that Jesus, would say things like this: whoever wants to follow me must deny themselves, take up their cross and follow me daily. Whoever wants to be great among you must become servant of all. The word was this like idea of this countercultural call that God had placed on people's life to something different. You look at Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. He talked about blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek. He goes on and he explains that like there's this different way that God views things than how the world views things. And this is foundational to what Jesus is talking about. He says that the sower, he's planting the word that represents the kingdom of God. And he goes on and he says this. He says, some people are like seed along the path where the word is sown. And as soon as they hear it, Satan comes, he takes away the word that was sown in them. Now, maybe you've been in that season before, or someone where, the gospel, the message of who God is, just either they weren't or you weren't interested. It just sort of fell on deaf ears, right? Like nothing seemed to be produced. But he goes on and he gives the next. He says, others is like the seed sown on rocky places. They hear the word and they receive it with joy, but since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. Right? So, some it's like it's planted, but there's just not this relationship. There's not this grounding there. And so it's just kind of taken away. And then check this out. There's a third type, right? It says, still, others are like seed sown among thorns. They hear the word, but check this out. But the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desire of other things come in and they choke out the word, making it unfruitful. Jesus gives three things there, and it's pretty fascinating, right? He gives these three things, the worries of this life. Now, this isn't like, oh man, what am I going to eat tonight worry. This is worries of how am I going to pay for college? How are we ever going to survive? Will I ever be able to retire? Will I be able to stay healthy? Will I, the big questions that are just seem to dominate and cause worry in our lives. And then the second thing he says is, it's the deceitfulness of wealth, right? Like this idea that if I just have more, if I have more money, if I have more stuff, then I will have arrived. Then I'll have everything I need, everything I desire, everything I want, which leads to the third thing, right? And it's the desires for other things. Like some versions say the lust of other things, right? This just wanting certain things that will satisfy or make us whole. And Jesus says eventually that sort of chokes us out. But remember, there's this fourth soil, right? And the fourth soil, Jesus gives this explanation. Check this out. He says, others are like seed on good soil. They hear the word, they hear it, they accept it, and here's what happens because of that. It produces a crop some 30, 60, some 100 times what was sown. It produces, get this, immeasurably more than anyone would have ever imagined. Because they heard the word, they believed in the promises of God, right? Faith. They believe in the promises of God and they live their lives according to it. Well, Jesus shares this word that I want to just spend a minute talking about with you. And we read about it in Acts chapter 20. And Paul's quoting Jesus here. And every week of this series, we've talked about a choice, right? Week 1, it was faith or fear. Faith over fear. Week 2 was eternal or temporary. Eternal or temporary. Which way am I going to live? Today, I want to give you another choice. And listen to what Jesus' words are in Acts chapter 20, verse 35. It says this, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus himself, who said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. We have give and we have receive. And the choice we have today is what's going to be greater in our lives. Are we going to choose to give or are we going to choose to receive? Give or receive. I really believe that if we're going to be people who are made for more, then we're going to be people that choose give over receive time and time and time and time again. Give over receive when it comes to how we spend our time and how we serve. Am I going to give of myself? Am I going to serve people? Or am I going to just look to be served? Am I going to give financially? And am I going to trust that God is going to bless that? Or am I going to just hope to receive more and more and more for me? Give over receive. Well, there's another story or another example of seed being sown in the scriptures. And this time it comes from Paul in 2 Corinthians. He's talking very specifically about this give or receive and what that means when it comes to sowing seed. And I just want to read a couple of verses to you and just really challenge you to trust God in this. To really look beyond, to look beyond maybe just your preconceived ideas of what generosity is all about, or to look beyond your fears of generosity, to look beyond the what ifs of what might happen, and to see a bigger picture of something that God wants to do to produce a crop 30 or 60 or 100 times more. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul's sharing a story about generosity, and he says this. He says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly, right? Whoever plants seeds sparingly will reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. So the measure which you sow, the measure which you are generous with your resources is the measure which you'll reap. And then he goes on and says this. He says, each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Here's one of the things we've always said at Movement, that our generosity is about our heart. It's not about a number. It's not about, you have to give this or you must give this, but rather what Paul's saying here is really reflects the value of generosity within our church, and that is that God wants your heart. And so as you just say, God, my heart is yours, he's going to make it very clear to you what the response should be. And that response comes with it this joy or this cheer as you give. And then check this out. He says, God is able to bless you abundantly so that in all things, at all times, having, check this out, all that you need, you will abound in every good work. I mean, God's going to provide everything that you need to be able to do good, to be generous, to sow seeds of generosity all the time. He's going to give you what you need in order to do the good that he's called you to do. That's a made for more life. And then he goes on, and we're going to skip down just a couple verses. He says this, "Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed, and it will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness." He says, "You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God." Now, we'll have a time in a couple of weeks from now where we'll be able to just express our thanksgiving to God for what he's doing. We're going to do that in person together on November 15th. It's going to be an awesome day as we celebrate how God is moving. But I just want you to hear this. I think this is so important. This is what I've seen in my life. This is what Paul's talking about here as he talks about sowing seeds of generosity. And that's this, that the more that we give, like the more that we trust God, the more that we put our faith and our trust in the promise that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive, that God's going to take what we give and we multiply it. Here's what we see happens. Like when we have a heart that's more and more surrendered to God and we give, God gives us more and more resources so we can be more and more generous, right? Like this made for more life really comes down to this. When we trust God and we take that step and we say, okay, God, I'm going to surrender my heart. I'm going to plant seed. I'm going to sow seeds of generosity. As we do that and we take that step of faith and we trust him that he will provide, here's what happens. Not only does he provide, but because our heart is being transformed and we're becoming more generous, he gives us even more to be more generous with. Here's what I want to challenge you with as we talk about give or receive. I think for many of us here, we're at a stage where maybe we're, because of fear of what could be, because of all the uncertainty that surrounds us, we're kind of holding tightly to our seed, just kind of going, okay, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to sow sparingly. And because of that, if we do that, we're going to miss the abundance of reaping a harvest that is immeasurably more. And so I'm going to challenge you just as we go through this week, as we prepare for next week, the 15th, as we come together and we get a chance to make a commitment to either affirm our commitment we made last year or perhaps make a commitment for the very first time, or maybe even God's just calling you to say, hey, I challenged you to this last year, but I'm challenging you to even more this year. Would you just be willing? Would you just be willing this week to simply just surrender and say, God, what is it you're calling me to give? Not necessarily from a dollar amount as much as, God, what is it that you're calling me to sow generously with so that you can produce a return that's far more than I could ever ask or imagine, immeasurably more than what I thought was possible. Because here's what happens. When we surrender, when we make our generosity about our heart, God transforms us and he gives us even more opportunities to be generous. And that's what a made for more life really looks like.
God, in this very moment, will you create room in our hearts, room wherever we're sitting, for us to be able to hear from you, to be able to experience your presence, God. Would you help us to make room for you in our lives? And would you meet us so that we can feel your presence?
Here is where I lay it down, every burden, every crown. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down, every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you. Whatever you want to do whatever you want to, and I will make room for you.
surrender.
This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. Every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender.
So here's the really awesome part when we think about what God is calling us when we say more with our partners. For the past 6 years, as Movement has grown, partners has always been a very important part of who we are as a community, who we are as Movement. So this Made for More series has only just grown our relationship with our partners stronger. And we were able to really narrow down what our relationship with the partners looks like, knowing that it's really built on prayer, built on what God is calling us to. And we were able to just really grow in that opportunity with each partner through Made for More. And so Evan, can you just tell us a little bit about how you've seen that relationship grow or what you see happening with our partners?
Yeah, sure. So we started by creating a team to help build and foster those relationships with our partners, including Christian Children's Home of Ohio, Lifeline, and Findlay City Schools. So by investing more intentionally in these partners, we've been able to help Lifeline hire 2 young pastors to help expand their work in Guatemala. We've been sending a group every other month down to CCHO to help them and just continue to build that relationship and develop that relationship. And then we've even been able to meet with teachers at Glenwood and serve teachers at Glenwood, despite not being able to meet there in person.
That's right. So the really awesome part in that is that we're not only individually investing in these partners financially, but we're individually going to these places that we're partnering with. Places like CCHO, going down every so often and meeting with those kids and building a relationship. That's really what partnering should look like and does look like for us at Movement and through through this Made for More journey. Also meeting with the Glenwood teachers. I personally know some Glenwood teachers, and I've had them reach out to me and just tell me how significant it is to feel support and to feel love and to see how God's working through us and to give back to them and just know that they are, going through a hard time of COVID, but we're here. So that's just really the beauty of what it looks like to be, working more with our partners.
That's awesome. And listen, as people made commitments last year when we started Made for More, it's helped us open more doors and opportunities to expand those partnerships. And listen, you're going to have a chance next week to make a commitment to this Made for More series, and we're really excited for that opportunity for you. Right now, though, we're just going to take an opportunity to give you a chance to give if you feel called to give this week, and you can do that right now at movementfindlay.com/give.
Yeah, and again, we're just so happy that you joined us this morning for our celebration and then just hear more about the Made for More series. And we just want to challenge you in asking that question, what is the more that God has for you? Just take time in prayer this week and just ask God and really just take time to focus on that question. So again, we're just so happy that you joined us. We can't wait to see you in person next week at Owens Community College. And we just thank you for being with us. So Movement, go and be the church.
Movement, as we've been going on this Made for More journey, one of the things we've talked about is doing more with partners. And one of our partners that we love to walk alongside of is the Christian Children's Home of Ohio. It's a residential facility for kids that are in need of a place to live as they're dealing with all sorts of trauma and brokenness in their lives. And we have an opportunity to do something very hands-on to help during this season. And so November 15th and 22nd, we have 2 in-person gatherings, the first being at Owens Community College, the second one being at our new Movement facility for a special vision and prayer time there. So those are both Sunday gatherings in person, and we want to ask you to participate and bring some stuff along with you to just serve and support CCHO. And so they've asked us to provide a few different things. The first is 3-in-1 body wash, shampoo, and conditioner, and I've got some help with that. So if you want to pick up shampoo and body wash, you can pick that up. Pass that along. The second are pillows. Their cottages and all their beds are in need of pillows, and they've asked if we could provide pillows for the kids that are going to be living there. And so that's option number 2. And option number 3 are Christmas decorations, both lights for outside of their cottages, there are individual cottages, or also inflatable Christmas decorations that they can put up outside of their cottages, just to give the kids a Christmas experience that it just brings joy to them. And so you can go online to movementfindlay.com, and you'll find a link there to sign up for what you're going to bring. That way we make sure we have stuff covered. Also check in Facebook, because we'll have info and opportunities. We'll engage you there in ways that you can point you to the Sign Up Genius, where you can register to bring some of these things either the 15th or the 22nd. Just want to encourage you to be a part of this as we head into the holiday season. This is a great opportunity to just live out Jesus' words, which are, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Thanks for being a part of this.